So, Matt, let's start with you, and let's start with the money. It's pretty clear at this point that Trump donors are paying at least some part of his legal bills. At least 10% of every dollar they contribute is going to him. Are they okay with this? Have we seen any stress signs from them that, they don't want their money spent this way?
Well, I mean, I'm not okay with it. I'm sure you're not okay with this idea candidates use their money for legal fees. I, as of yet, seen a person that's part of the sort of Trump cult group be offended by this. I mean, all along the way, he's used money in very, very bizarre ways. I mean, I think he still has the capacity to raise more small dollar contributions than any other Republican in this race. The problem he gets into is the combination of indictments and inability to have cash in a general election that he may need. But I don't think it has any effect on his Republican primary campaign.
Yeah, Rick, I want to pick up on that point because that's, for me, the linchpin as a former national chairman and even a local party chairman. Cash for the campaign matters. So if a large portion of those Republican dollars continues to go towards Trump's legal battles, what impact could the party as well as other candidates who are kind of relying on that extra support from a presidential campaign may have on their ability to compete against the Democrats next year?
Yeah, Michael, I think that wounds him. I mean, Trump always likes to say that without him, cable television is going down the drain. Well, he's supporting the legal profession. I mean, he's going to be in cases for the rest of his life. And, lawyers and lawyers and lawyers are being employed, and he's paying them a lot of money. So that's going to hurt the down ballot candidates. I do think that the way it has to be explained to Republican primary voters is that Donald Trump is the kid who stole your lunch money, and then he stiffed the lunch ladies in the cafeteria. He's taking your money and using it for his own purposes, which is what his business model has been for 45 years. So, the sooner people realize that, the sooner they're going to, I hope, abandon him.
Matt, I want to switch to the rally last night. It was interesting. The New York Times wrote this about Trump's rally. Quote, to Mr. Trump's unflinching supporters gathered inside the arena, the cascade of indictments was a punchline, if not a badge of honor. I guess we have to step back and look at this and ask ourselves, could Trump's legal troubles actually be making Trump more popular and, dare I say it, more electable?
Well, I don't know about more electable. I think it solidifies his support among the sort of Republican Trump voters. I think there's no doubt that happens. After the first indictments, his poll numbers went up. After his second indictments, his poll numbers even more solidified against Ron DeSantis. And we were talking about Trump spending his legal money. Then you have the leading other Republican candidate who basically has spent all his money on stuff and has had no impact on this race. And so the weight of the indictments, I don't think starts affecting the dynamics of this race. I don't think until we get past the Republican convention next year. And then I think the weight of all this, I think Republicans recognize this. They don't know what to do about it. But they recognize the problem. But I think that political weight really starts to really sink in come the Republican convention and its aftermath as he heads into a general election.
So, Rick, to Matt's point about the political weight, one of the more startling moments in the rally last night has a lot of weight around it. And when the former president suggested Republicans block aid to Ukraine unless the President Biden cooperates with their Hunter Biden investigations. This sounds to me, Rick, an awful lot like his impeachment scandals playing right back, and he doesn't seem to care. How do you see it?
Yeah, it's, Michael, it's just appalling. And the fact that he uses global foreign policy to try to help him get out of a legal case. The problem right now is that it's like in cognitive biases, the double down theory, where if someone has a very strongly held point of view, like Trump voters, and you try to disabuse them, even in the form of legal cases, it makes them even more confirmed in their point of view. I hope Matt is right that the weight of these trials, as Chris Christie said, he'll be an indicted felon in 4 different trials running for president. That's absolutely something that we've never, ever seen in American history. And I hope, Republican voters are appalled by it, too.